Section 3.3 is all about Jamestown, our first English colony to be steadily here in the North American continent. So Jamestown, England's first real colony. Looking at England itself, a lot of the English big moneyed individuals are going to go to Ireland. And in Ireland, they're going to establish the plantation system, which is a system where they cordon off areas that traditionally was used for farming. But what will happen is the wool industry is becoming very, very important. So they're going to cordon off the area specifically for the herding and raising of sheep. As this happens, it's going to push farmers out that have been there in Ireland for quite some time. Colonization is driven not only by joint stock companies, by the church as well. Individuals will leave Ireland, go to Western Europe. They're going to be there for a while. Then eventually they're going to go from there into the colonies of the United States. The goal would be to collect raw materials, lumber, tobacco, furs, to develop market goods so that they can earn money. Most of the English view the native population as a threat, so they try to keep them as far away from them as possible. And the last goal, and not really a major goal for them, is to investigate Roanoke to see what happened there. The Virginia Company was formed in 1606. It was given a royal charter to a group of London investors. The initial voyage had 109 men. They're going to reach the Chesapeake Bay in May of 1607. The group of Indians that they're going to meet at that area is the Powhatan Nation. And their chief, who a lot of people refer to as Powhatan. So their chief is going to be the one who talks mostly with Jamestown. They saw the Europeans as a source of trade, possibly, but it didn't really work out that way. And the Europeans at the beginning thought that possibly they could have a trade with the native population. It just got so bad, the relationship that was so strained between them, it just never happened. So in Jamestown itself, there's going to be a tragedy. Basically, what is going to happen? Of our first 109 individuals that come to Jamestown, their initial goal is to look for gold. They bring instrumentation to look for gold. They don't bring as much things as they need for food. They don't have the proper things that they need to take care of themselves. So over that first winter, that 109 men shrink to 60. Within 9 months, there's only 38 of them left. But there's an influx of colonists that are coming in that are bulking up the numbers. So by November of 1609, they have roughly 500 people within Jamestown itself. Between 1609 and 1610, it's a super, super bad winter. They do not do well. The ships that they are waiting for supplies in the fall, they never arrive. And so by spring, those 500 colonists, men and women alike, shrink to just 60 men that are left. And it goes into very dire extremes. These people are dying of starvation. They are dying of exposure. It is reported that they boiled their shoes for the leather. One man, we know for a fact, he killed his wife. He'd planned to eat her. So it was pretty bad for them there. But in March of 1610, they do have some new ships that arrive and save those 60 men that are left. Now, there are 3 important people when it comes to Jamestown itself and the founding of it, so we're going to talk about them now. The first individual is John Smith. John Smith, he is a hothead. He's a troublemaker. He likes to start fights. And John Smith was arrested on ship on his way to the New World. Now, John Smith is taken below and he is housed in the brig of the ship. They're the goal would be to execute him. But they can't do it while they're in ship because they don't know who the leader of Jamestown is going to be. So they have a packet of papers, and in that is an envelope that is sealed. And when they decide the location where they're going to set up Jamestown, then they can open it to see who's the leader. So he's arrested, and they arrive in 1607. They decide where they're going to put Jamestown. They pull him off the boat, and they tie him to a tree, and they open up the letter to see who is going to be the person who's going to give the order to execute him. Turns out that the king named John Smith as the first governor of the Virginia colony of Jamestown. So he promptly gives himself a pardon, and he goes about his business. Now, he is going to explore quite a lot of the Chesapeake Bay area in the 2 years that he's there. He's there 1607 to 1609. He's a good leader, and he writes about all of his things that he does. He has several books out there that you can read if you want to read about what he explored. Now, the next person that's important is Pocahontas. Pocahontas, there are two versions of the story of Pocahontas. There's the Disney version, which follows along with kind of what John Smith has to say. John Smith was 26 years old when he met Pocahontas, and Pocahontas was 13. Now, his version is that he was brought before Powhatan, and in doing so, that Powhatan said, execute them. And Pocahontas comes out and is like, no, please, don't. So that's his version that Disney goes with. Now, the other version is written by Pocahontas herself. Pocahontas will meet John Smith in 1607. She is 12 years old initially when the English landed. She'll be 13 at the time that John Smith will be brought before her father. Now, Pocahontas is Powhatan's favorite kid. He adores this girl. And out of all of his kids, everyone knows that Pocahontas is his favorite. And so her version is that John Smith was brought before him, and Powhatan was going to go off and take care of John Smith. And Pocahontas is like, no, I'm turning 13, basically. He's having a celebration for her birthday. And so she basically is like, stay with me, Dad. And so he does. Over the course of a couple days, they find out that John Smith was exploring, or he got lost in the woods. We're not really sure. There are different versions of that. But he couldn't find his way back to Jamestown. And so Powhatan has him returned to Jamestown unharmed. In 1613, Pocahontas was out with her two sisters, and she will be captured and taken to Jamestown, where she's held for ransom. And over the course of a year, the Powhatan Nation is asked for several things to get her back, and Powhatan pays for all of it. But then Pocahontas never returned. So after a year, he gets kind of fed up with that. And so he surrounds Jamestown with intending to burn it down and get his daughter back. John Ralph, this individual here, John Ralph is now the governor of Jamestown. And so he wants to talk to Powhatan and keep things from escalating into a war. So John Ralph talks to Powhatan and says, well, let's sign a treaty. The people of Jamestown will stay in their area, and you stay in your area. And I only want one thing, and that is Pocahontas. So Powhatan at first is like, no, that's not going to happen. He wants to talk to Pocahontas. And Pocahontas agrees to the marriage because she doesn't want to see anyone get hurt. She has people of her tribe that she loves. Over the past year, there are people within Jamestown she's grown to care about. So she doesn't want anybody to get hurt. So she agrees to the marriage. A month later, in April 5th, 1614, she will marry John Ralph. She will marry John Ralph. And they go on to have a child. He changes her name to Rebecca. They force her to dress English. They force her to speak only English. She has to become a Protestant. And they encourage her to write in English about her life. And so there are these journals that you can read that belong to Pocahontas. In 1616, John Rolfe's business is going very well, and so he has to go back to England, and he takes Pocahontas with him, Pocahontas and their son. They go back to England, and he kind of parades her all over the place. Then, while they're in England, she starts to not feel well, and I think she's just homesick. She needs to come home. So after a year of being there, he decides to bring her home. And not far off the coast of Ireland, she dies. So he takes her back to England, has her buried, leaves his son with his parents, and then he comes back to Jamestown to basically start a new life. Now, who is John Rolfe? John Rolfe will arrive in 1610. He's the one who's considered to be one of the saviors of Jamestown because he brings supply ships. He brings food, he brings medicines with them, and they're going to save those remaining 60 individuals. Between 1610 and 1612, he develops a hybrid of tobacco, so it is better for the people of England, meaning that it isn't so bitter. It has a better taste to it, so more people want to smoke it. He begins to export in 1612. So by 1616, that's why his business is doing so well. We know in 1614 he married Pocahontas. 1615, Jamestown is now a boom town. Tobacco, super cash crop for that of Jamestown. It's doing really, really well. And it is that cash crop is the reason why he has to go to England with Pocahontas. So he is now the governor of Jamestown. Jamestown is doing so well. There's tobacco planted everywhere. Every garden, every field, they grow tobacco because tobacco grows really well in the Chesapeake Bay. And so they're doing really good. So what's going to happen that's going to change Jamestown? There is an incident in 1619 where there's a slave ship that is traveling along the coastline. It gets into trouble, and their boat's going to sink if they don't get help. So the owner of the ship goes to John Rolfe and says, "Please help us." And John Rolfe, he agrees to help them. The people of Jamestown help them fix their boat, but the owner of the boat doesn't have any money to provide to Jamestown in compensation, so he offers them 20 slaves in payment. John Rolfe in the beginning doesn't want it. He considers them an economic burden. They're too expensive to take care of. But he relents and he takes the 20 slaves. And he has those slaves for about a year, but it proves that it's too costly for him. He'd prefer to have indentures to slaves. And so he goes out a year later and he sells his slaves off to other individuals. Now, he doesn't sell them in big groups. He sells them one or two at a time, and he spreads them out. That way, nobody has this large labor force working tobacco fields. John Rolfe still is the very top individual who is selling tobacco out of Jamestown. By the 1680s, less indentures are coming to America, and it is by 1685 that slavery really is ingrained in North America. It becomes part of our economy. Eventually, the colonists do fight with the Powhatan Nation. Powhatan dies in 1622. His brother, Opakachanaco, he is going to take over, and he hates the English. He really does. And he wants to get rid of them as fast as possible. He leads a surprise attack against the English with 12 chieftains behind him. He kills 347 colonists in his fight. And this is over 1622 to 1632 is when kind of this war between the Powhatan Nation and Jamestown is going on. The Virginia Company in 1632 can no longer fight against the native population, and so they're basically bankrupt. And so when the natives call for peace in 1632, they're very happy to give it to them. The Virginia Company appeals to that of the Crown in hopes to get some relief, and the Crown says, absolutely, we'll help you, and converts the Virginia Company and Jamestown, the whole area, into a royal charter rather than the proprietary charter that it had been. William Berkeley will be named as governor of that of Jamestown. And William Berkeley, he has some good policies, but he also has some not so good policies. And this is going to lead to what was known as Bacon's Rebellion. It's an uprising in 1676 led by Nathaniel Bacon. A band of Virginia colonists rise up against Governor William Berkeley. He has a very friendly policy towards natives, and this causes problems with those individuals on the outskirts of Jamestown because they're being raided by native individuals who don't like the English encroachment into their land. William Berkeley also had this policy of if you became a council member, you didn't have to pay taxes. But the Crown is still going to expect taxes from everyone. So he raises taxes on everybody else to cover the difference. And so that was a problem as well. There was a power struggle possibly between Bacon and Berkeley itself. So what's going to happen? In 1676, colonists are going to band together to attack native villages. They're going to kill 30 natives. And the Powhatan Nation decides that for every one of us you kill, we're going to kill 10 white people. So after they kill 30 natives, they go out and kill 30 white individuals. In July of 1676, Bacon's supporters number between 300 and 500. They get a little overzealous and they go out and they attack a friendly village. And so in retaliation, the Powhatan Nation now cuts off all relations with Jamestown and they go to burn it down. Berkeley sends out for Bacon to be arrested since he incited a riot. Bacon flees into the swamps. It doesn't take him very long before he gets dysentery in the local swamps in October of 1676 and he dies. After he dies, the rebellion falls apart. And things go back to normal. Berkeley orders all those who were supportive of Bacon, however, to be arrested. In all, 23 men will be accused of supporting Bacon. They will be tried, and their punishment is public hanging. So they all lose their life. It shows that Jamestown itself is not going to put up with anybody just going out willy-nilly and doing whatever they want. So the next section is 3.4, Plymouth and the Massachusetts Bay Colony.